know exactly how hard this fight is going to be. And I also know that I am absolutely roaring to go.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Stand on Guard. That was the beginning of our discussion this morning. Justin Trudeau's roaring to go. He means raring to go. When we come back, some really classic moments in an interview that has been largely ignored by much of the media and what it means. We'll be right back. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Thanks for watching today. Happy Thanksgiving. I haven't switched my allegiance to the New Democratic Party with the orange. It's Thanksgiving. I thought I'd look a little festive today. So thank you for joining me on this holiday. Not a holiday for me, unfortunately. I've got to work for the post-millennial. Not Thanksgiving south of the border. So not a holiday for me. And I wish it was, but I'm going to hopefully stop a little early today and have Thanksgiving dinner with the family members that I have here. So thank you so much for watching. And I discovered this interview because there's an Epoch Times article this morning that talked about it. I've actually played a clip. You saw at the very beginning there a very brief moment from this interview. And I've chosen 3 key moments to show you this morning because this is an interview Trudeau did before the current chaos in the House. And of course, the House isn't sitting this week. It's Thanksgiving break. But what's going on? And I did a story on this for the Post-Millennial. This is not mine. This is Althea Raj's opinion piece on this about the caucus revolt. This is an insurrection. Whoops, can't use that word. That's especially if it's associated with Donald Trump. This is an insurrection going on in the Liberal caucus right now. They want Trudeau out. And the stories about this are growing. This is where it started. The CBC got some dirt from some of their sources in the Liberal caucus. Most the sources I know that are Liberals are old Liberals who are no longer in the Liberal caucus. Nobody in the Liberal caucus will talk to me. But they sure like talking to CBC. And some of them, of course, these turncoats, these rebels, these dissidents, as I called them in my story, and I think I called them in my last column about this, these dissidents are actually passing around a petition. It's a petition, yeah. They're calling it a letter, but I'm calling it a petition to get Justin Trudeau out. Now, I don't know how many they have. I'm guessing, it sounds like about 40 MPs have signed this thing because it's gone from page 1 to page 2. So they might be exaggerating. But what they want to do is get enough people to sign on so that they can use this as leverage the next time they get together with Justin Trudeau. God knows when that's going to be. And say, this is where you stand with the caucus. You've lost support of the caucus. Now, as I've mentioned, and if you saw my piece the other day on Redacted with Clayton, I said the Liberal Party has removed any mechanism it once had for the caucus to remove the leader. So that's an age-old tradition, of course. You know about how Neville Chamberlain was removed by the Conservative caucus after the fall of France, because they said we cannot go on with Neville Chamberlain. The policy of appeasement didn't work, and he's not waging war very well. We're about to be defeated. Bring in Winston Churchill. That was the feeling of the Conservative caucus in UK in 1940, June 1940. So they removed Neville Chamberlain. Apparently, you can't do that with the Liberal government. The Liberal caucus can't remove the leader, but they can sure as hell put enough pressure on Justin Trudeau for him to think twice about it. And that's really what this is all about, what's going on with this petition. Now, they've got a week off, and I mentioned this yesterday, and thank you so much, everybody who watched yesterday. I really appreciate that. It was a big success, and it means so much to me. But Trudeau has not commented on the chaos in the House and the Green Slush Fund essentially shutting down government business in the House for 2 weeks now. Previous week and the week before that, no government business. The Speaker has agreed with the opposition parties that the RCMP should see an unredacted copy of the documents relating to the Green Slush Fund Agency, otherwise known as the Sustainable Development Technology Canada Fund, that is sucking up your tax dollars and giving them to friends of the Liberal Party. A week ago, we had Michael Barrett on the show, the Member of Parliament, who is also the Conservative Party ethics critic. He's the official opposition ethics critic. He was on the show to talk about this. Trudeau hasn't talked about this at all. He's referred to the Green Slush Fund in question period. Obviously, he's had to do that. He's talked about it and dismissed it as nothing. He has not addressed the shutdown in Parliament at all. He's had his underlings like Chrystia Freeland talk about it. He's had Karina Gould, the government House leader, talk about it. Trudeau has said nothing. And he said nothing. He has not commented on this petition that's going around, hoping it's either a bluff, can't be real, or if he ignores it, it'll go away. That's how Trudeau generally deals with most things. So how is he really feeling in his heart, if he has a heart, in his heart of hearts, how does he really feel about things? And so I found this interview because the Epoch Times decided, hey, nobody's really watched this thing. This was conducted on October 1st, or it was released on October 1st by a Liberal MP by the name of Nate Erskine Smith. Of course, the interview is just sycophantic. He's toadying up to Justin Trudeau. We love you so much. You're so smart. And it's nauseating at times to watch, but it's necessary to watch because this is Trudeau's final statement before he essentially took off first for the Francophonie Summit. Then he took off for his Laos meeting. Now he's off for the Thanksgiving break for a week. Don't expect him to be saying much this week. He'll probably release a Thanksgiving message today if he hasn't done so already. I haven't looked. Does that. Every prime minister does that. Actually, 1 year it was quite controversial because he wanted to strip Thanksgiving of all of its Christian origins. But that's because he hates Christianity. He's a self-hating Roman Catholic. He's a smorgasbord Roman Catholic who picks and chooses from his own faith the things he will abide by and the things he won't abide by. Because ultimately, the final arbitrator of Justin Trudeau's faith is not God, it's himself. He's a humanist. He's a complete humanist, and he's a narcissistic individual. And that's all this is about. Let's watch some of these clips because it's fascinating where Justin Trudeau's head is at.
Double down on fighting climate change and growing the economy at the same time. We got to step up on supporting the most vulnerable. We got to move forward on reconciliation. We got to figure out how we navigate through a much more challenging world that has impacts on us. Those are all things that the Harper government wasn't doing, and those were all the things that drove me to saying, yeah, Canadians need that choice to be able to make. Well, that's sort of the same choice they're going to make in the next election. Choice whether you moving forward on the fight against climate change or whether we just basically throw up our hands and go back to leaning heavily on fossil fuels with the kind of short-term thinking that is going to end up being so costly for Canadians just a few years down the road, not just with the costs of climate impacts and wildfires, but also with the missed opportunities to participate in where the global economy is going. That question of, okay,
just a minute. Stop for a second, Justin. The global economy is not going there. If you had any eyes to see and any ears to hear, you would be aware that the automakers are backing away from electric vehicles because there's no market for them en masse. They're backing away. And legislatures around the world are backing away from these pledges to eradicate the combustion engine by, 2030? Because they realize it's insane. It's not going to happen. It's going to mean chaos. People won't be able to drive. And the automakers are moving away from these green energy plans. And so this is complete pie in the sky nonsense from Justin Trudeau. to suggest that Canada needs to be on this pathway, this green pathway, or else we're going to be left in the dark. Yeah, we're going to be left in the dark because of his climate policies. We're not going to have enough fuel to heat our homes or put the lights on. That's how we're going to be left in the dark. But let's listen to some more.
At this time of backlash against progressive policies of...
There it is. Where have you heard that before? And I'll show you a clip. He's consistent about this. It's a backlash against progressive policies. That's all this is about. He's 20 points behind in the polls, and it's because of this backlash against progressive policies from these Neanderthals out there.
Inclusion and diversity. Are we going to double down on making sure that everyone gets to participate or play? Or are we going to continue to drive wedges into people and group Canadians into subgroups that are angry at each other?
Who's been doing that? Who's been grouping Canadians in the subgroup? Who's been doing that, Justin? Your identity politics. You see, he projects every time. He can't help himself. He projects his faults on his opponents. And this is a classic interview because he has nothing to offer except fighting climate change. He hasn't learned a damn thing in 9 years, that he's done nothing to so-called fight climate change. His carbon tax has done nothing to bring emissions down, and even if it does, it's negligible. He has his climate fighting schemes have done nothing except bring disaster and impoverish Canadians and threaten to do worse. He's learned nothing.
Like, all those questions are just as important now, if not even more important, because back in the run-up to 2015, I think everyone got a sense that, we just need to find an alternative to Stephen Harper, and whether it's Mulcair or whether it's Trudeau, the winds were turning in that sense.
Yeah.
This is going to be harder in a lot of levels because it's a time where people are frustrated, but the choice to make a deliberate choice to say, no, we're going to continue and even double down on the things we know are going to get us better, which is more protection of the environment, more inclusion of people, more understanding how you have to build the economy from the bottom up, from the center out, instead of from the top down, which Poilievre is still proposing. Like, this is going to be a much harder election than 2015. It always was going to be. We've got to double down.
So he's gearing up here. Do you see what he's saying? And he says it in the next segment. But clearly, this is not a man who's prepared to resign, even if he gets 100 MPs in his caucus saying go. Justin Trudeau is not going. You know why? Because he's getting ready for the next election. And I listened to this for the first time this morning, and I said, this guy, not only isn't he going anywhere, he wants an early election. He really does. So there's talk of him coming back and proroguing. I don't think he will. Because if you listen to his words in the next segment, he really does want to get things going on this election. He really thinks Canadians want him to double down. He said it. He believes Canadians want him to double down on fighting climate change. He really believes this elite school of public affairs that says Canadians sit around at night navel gazing and worrying about the catastrophe that's coming because we're not doing enough to stop climate change. He believes that. He really believes we sit around our kitchen tables or maybe even lie awake at night in bed worrying about climate change and the effect it's going to have. That people don't really worry about inflation. They don't worry about not having a job. They don't worry about not being able to pay the rent or the mortgage. They worry about climate change. And that's the first thing Justin Trudeau said. Why do you want to be reelected? Why do you want to fight another election? Because I have to double down on climate change and diversity and inclusion, DEI. Climate change and DEI. That's what Justin Trudeau is fighting the next election on. Bring it on, boy. You are such a narcissistic fiend, and it just never ends. Let's listen to some more of this tyrant blather on. This man with unbridled ego, this unalloyed narcissist, continue to tell you how wonderful he is and how only Justin Trudeau can lead the Liberals. Nobody else can do it. Do you think he wants an election? I do.
This kind of fight that is so fundamental to how Canadians come out or come through what has been a really, really difficult years is exactly why I got into politics, to make sure that we are delivering the absolute best future for Canadians. And
now, once again, if you're joining us late today, this is an interview, and I know you can back up and watch it, but if you're watching live right now, this is an interview that Justin Trudeau did. The last really complete interview he did before he started his globe-trotting trek from the summit Francophonie to Laos to the Thanksgiving break. This is the last one. He did it with a Liberal MP named Nate Erskine Smith. He's got a YouTube station, and he puts out a broadcast maybe once a week sometimes. Gets very few people watching it. Very few people have watched this. But this is Justin Trudeau's mentality as of October 1st. And he is looking for an election.
And I think one of the interesting questions that even as people ask me why I want to do this all the time, nobody's asking Poilievre why he wants to do it. What is it that he is being driven to fight for? We know what he's fighting against. What is he fighting for?
Do you know what Poilievre is fighting for? Now that's completely inaccurate. It's very unfair. Go to a rally, Poilievre, and you'll hear all about what Poilievre and the Conservatives are fighting for. Now you might not agree with, you might not think he's serious about implementing all these things he's fighting for, but it's a blatant lie to suggest Poilievre's not fighting for anything. He's fighting for families. He's fighting for parental rights, so parents don't have to take their orders from the state. He's fighting for jobs that are based in a capitalistic economy, not government jobs, not everybody working for the government. That's being for something. That's not being against government jobs. It's being for real jobs. He's for crime-free streets. Now, it's a big goal, but that's being for something where you can walk down the street at night and not be afraid of being mugged or assaulted by somebody. That's becoming increasingly real, even in places like Ottawa. It used to be the safest capital in the world. Try walking down the market area now, late at night, and do you feel safe anymore? So Poilievre is talking about safe streets. That's being for something, Justin. Yeah, it is. And he's talking about people being able to bring home their paycheck like they used to, so they can spend it on themselves and their family and not give it back to the government or give it to the government. That's being for something, Justin. That's being for self-preservation, self-fulfillment. That's being for freedom. And he's for freedom of speech, which you are not. I would say you should turn that argument on its head and saying, what are you for, Justin Trudeau? You're against freedom of speech. You're against individual liberty. You're against parental rights. You're against my ability to make a living and to share my personal wealth with my family. You're against all those things. So you are such a hypocrite. Nothing you say ever makes any sense. Nothing you say is ever rational. Nothing you say is anything else but projecting your own faults on other people. Now, I got one more thing to show you here. One more clip from this. And I hope you're enjoying this. This, I think, is Justin Trudeau's real statement about, are we going into an election? Or am I going to prorogue Parliament? He's not going to prorogue Parliament. I don't believe so. You'll see lots of YouTube stations saying that based on nothing except their own surmise.
What is the positive, ambitious vision of this country that we're putting forward? And the challenge is, because everyone said, okay, what's the new vision? The things we've been fighting for 8 years, environment and economy, inclusion, progressive values, defense of individual rights, respect for everyone, non-polarized politics that focus on bringing people together, all those things that we've been fighting for are not just still important, they're more important in this upcoming election than they ever have been. That's on the line. Canada has built actually an edge, an advantage over so many other countries in the world because we've been leaning in the right way. And the retrograde forces that are pulling back and saying, oh no, this is why we're doing badly. This is fighting against climate change is why Canadians can't afford their groceries, which is a massive oversimplification and, as been shown by many experts, just wrong. But certainly.
No, actually, once again, Parliamentary Bureau of Economy, PBO, just said again that the vast majority of Canadians are paying more in your bloody carbon tax than they're getting back from any stupid carbon rebate. Trudeau's lying again about this. He always does.
Poorly for the future. All those things remain at the heart of what we're fighting for. How we wrap that up into a compelling, ambitious vision that gets people out into the streets to be a movement like we were in 2015 that is going to be tackling Pierre Poilievre with that same enthusiasm that we did 9 years ago. That is the single-minded focus that I have over the next few months as a party leader, even as I continue as Prime Minister with a single-minded focus on actually delivering the things that are going to get Canadians back to a place of positivity and ambition. Because that's what we need, and that's the place where Canadians naturally sit in. Right now, they look at me and they're not feeling it as strongly as I think we need them to when the election rolls around.
Which could be any day. He's talking about a man getting ready, gearing up for an election. It's clear that's what his plan is. That's where his mind is at. It's not about coming back in the spring. Now, once again, Justin Trudeau is capable of erratic behavior. He could come back in a week after this Thanksgiving break and saying, hey, we're going to prorogue Parliament because I woke up feeling that way this morning. Could be. I just want to make sure I haven't shown you this.
Climate change and growing the economy at the same time. We got to step up and supporting the most vulnerable. We got to move forward on reconciliation. We got to figure out how we navigate through a much more challenging world that has impacts on us. Those are all things that the Harper government wasn't doing, and those were all the things that drove me to saying, yeah, Canadians need that choice to be able to make.
So, that's what he's running on. It's still Stephen Harper. Do you notice that? 9 years of a Liberal government, and he's still blaming Stephen Harper. What does that remind you of? He's taking the page. This is the playbook that he's sharing with Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris in the United States, the Democratic presidential candidate, who is hopefully going to lose big time to Donald Trump in less than a month, 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks from tomorrow is the U.S. election. And I'm hoping and praying that an airhead like Kamala Harris does not become the next president of the United States. But she's using the same playbook. Hey, don't pay any attention to the last 4 years of disaster that we let in 25 to 40 million illegal immigrants at the border. That's somebody else's fault. She kept saying during the only presidential debate with Donald Trump we're going to see. She kept saying, it's time to turn the page. Time to turn the page. I'm sorry, you're on that page. Yeah, it is time to turn the page to Donald Trump, to another administration that's actually concerned about Americans. But you are the one who's on the page right now. Justin Trudeau is the one who's on the page in Canada right now. But he's saying the same thing as Kamala Harris. It's time to turn the page because Stephen Harper was just so bad. Sorry, Justin, that was 9 years ago. You've had 9 years to do something. You had one majority government. You've had two minority governments because Canadians had never been that sure about you. And you're going to get completely destroyed in this next federal election. And you can go out and say, I'm roaring to go. You mean raring to go. You can say that all you want. You can say that you're prepared to fight, that you're above politics. And I didn't put that clip in here today, but of course, just before he went to Paris for the Francophonie summit, He told us all that he's not about politics, folks. I'm not about politics. I'm about working for Canadians, and that's what my government's about. We're not about politics. In fact, why should we have another election? Because this isn't about politics. It's about governing, and I can just keep on governing for the rest of the next decade. And that's really what he believes. But if you watch this interview we saw today, this is about a man who really thinks he is 100% right, on the right track, and the Canadians are going to reward him. Canadians still love him. Forget those crowds. Forget those protesters. Forget those poll members. Canadians love me, is what Justin Trudeau continues to say, and he believes that in his narcissistic head. That's the kind of leader Justin Trudeau remains and will always be. He's just about socks and a hairstyle. And there's very little else in this man. This guy who just binge watches sci-fi television, reads comic books, and just doesn't want to look at government memos and documents. He eschews that sort of thing. It's just too boring. Government is just too boring. It's more fun to talk about how you're going to change the world. And just like Barack Obama, Justin Trudeau is a perpetual political campaigner. This is why it's such a joke when he says, I'm not about politics. He's all about politics, just like Barack Obama was. Barack Obama, no matter what year of his presidency, was always engaged in a perpetual campaign, attacking the Republicans, attacking his opponents, attacking people who didn't agree with him, saying he was going to change the world. He was going to bring in he was going to be the man of destiny. And that's where Justin Trudeau really believes he is right now. He's always campaigning. He is a consummate politician, but he's a consummate politician that needs a huge comeuppance because he has unbridled ego. And as I said in the thumbnail here, if you watch that, he's got ego to spare. And that's what Justin Trudeau is all about. Thank you so much for watching today. I wish you God's blessing on this Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And I hope we have a great week ahead of us. I'll be on every day this week. Same time, same Krayden channel. Thank you so much. And I will continue to give you all the news you need to know so that you can resolve to resist. And that's what this station is all about.